Greetings from virtual South Florida at Homestead-Miami Speedway, the site of round 2 of the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Marine from the IndyCar Radio Network, alongside Katie Kyle. Katie, a lot of excitement in round 1 on the streets of Montreal in the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. For round 1 last week, Alex Palou came out on top. Many of the same protagonists from the race last week will be taking part once again here today, but we do have some fresh faces joining us for round 2. They went in on some of the oval action.
Yeah, it was a great opening round up in Canada. Happy to be in virtual South Florida today, though, Ryan. New faces are some old faces from the NTT IndyCar Series. You've got Tony Kanaan joining us. Simon Pagenaud also back with us for round 2. He was a 2-time winner in the 2020 season of the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. Connor Daly, he's got a new rig this season. Ed also back with us. Enzo Fittipaldi, the brother of Pietro Fittipaldi, and of course the grandson of Emerson Fittipaldi. And finally, Felix Rosenquist, who we're used to seeing in the number 10 with Chip Ganassi Racing, with Arrow McLaren SP in that number 7.
Well, back to defend the race win from last week is Alex Palou. What a race it was, holding off a fellow veteran iRacer, Scott McLaughlin. Those two duking it out towards the end of that race. Impressive was Alex in his first race, you might say, with Chip Ganassi Racing.
What an impressive run that is. He absolutely dominated last week, only losing the lead for a couple laps when he came in for a pit stop. And how about that battle with Scott, Ryan? I would say that was the most exciting moment of the day in Montreal. But of course, Alex Palou back with us this weekend. I expect him to certainly put on another show for us.
Unfortunately, no Scott McLaughlin here in round 2. He was trying to be with us. Some travel issues scuppered those plans, but we expect to see him back here in round number 3 next week. Let's take a look at this 1.5-mile oval of Homestead-Miami Speedway. The gates opened in 1995 when it was built. This track was a smaller facsimile of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 4 distinct corners, very flat. Obviously, it's gone through some changes since then. Now we're talking about the high banks of Homestead-Miami Speedway. 20 degrees of progressive banking, getting steeper as you get closer to that outside wall. As mentioned, opened in 1995 and has played host to some great racing over the years. All kinds of different racing here with cars, with stock cars, and of course IndyCar crowning champions here for quite some time. It's a favorite venue of drivers, and it seems like ZAR too. They've been clamoring to see this track return to the NTT IndyCar Series schedule ever since it was announced as part of the iRacing Challenge.
You know, I certainly wouldn't complain if we head back to Miami at some point. We've got 6 drivers in the field with experience here. Charlie Kimball in Indy Lights, James Davison in NASCAR. But in the IndyCar field, Ed Carpenter, Tony Kanaan, he made his debut here back in 1998, Ryan. Will Power and Takuma Sato, all with real IndyCar experience.
Exactly. We'll look forward to seeing what they can do. Maybe some of that real-world experience helps them here in race analysis for you. 100 laps, 150 miles, the race distance. Look at that pit lane delta, 22 seconds at the 50-mile-per-hour pit lane speed limiter. 2 fast repairs, and for the uninitiated, that just means a instantaneous fix of any damage caused. You still lose the time for having to come pit lane, but there's no time associated with fixing the damage. However, if you were to exhaust those 2 fast repairs, it might be tragic for you if you're hoping to win one of these races. Fuel window, something to keep an eye on, 57 to 50 laps. So you're looking at around, well, certainly 1 pit stop, but possibly more. And depending on how full course yellows fall, and we will have some, assuming there are the incidents here today, then we will see some pit strategy with tire fall off as well.
That could always throw a wrench in things for these drivers and wind up pretty interesting.
I can't wait to see how this one plays out. Such an exciting race venue. It's put on so many good races over the years. Looking back, though, to race 1, this is such a different venue to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. Do you expect some of the similar faces from round 1 to factor in once again, Katie, or might we see a couple of different names come to the fore?
Ryan, what I really love about this IndyCar iRacing Challenge is that it is so similar to the real NTT IndyCar Series, and that we're going to all different tracks. So last week we were at a very smooth race course, right? Now this week we're at a short and very challenging oval. That sounds a lot like the real NTT IndyCar Series season, and also a lot like the season 2. I think we're going to see some different faces up front, which always provides some excitement.
Now taking a look at the qualifying results, it's It's not done yet, but looking at scoring, the moment it could be Enzo Fittipaldi starting on pole with RC Anderson to his outside. It looks like a couple of drivers still have yet to put in their qualifying laps. So, yeah, I'd say there could be some fresh blood up at the front of this thing. We'll see how that plays out. Hopefully that is the case. For the drivers with the real-world experience, iRacing goes through such to model the IR18 body kit for this IndyCar. These tracks are laser scanned. This track actually went through a facelift here in the last couple of builds from iRacing and looks beautiful as a result. Do you think any of that real-world experience, though, will carry over? Might that help some of these drivers that have raced on this facility before?
I think we always see it proven that the young guns tend to fare pretty well in these virtual racing events, Ryan. And what I also like about this is that you can join iRacing and race against some of your IndyCar heroes. Memberships are 40% off right now if you go to iRacing.com. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and check out iRacing.com. Look, there it is, Enzo Fittipaldi. He is on the pole. Like I said, our young guns. He's in the 50 for Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing, and right alongside him in the 75 from Top Gun Racing is RC Enerson.
James Davison, who raced on this track in his stock car in the real world earlier this year, coming off of a great run in an iRacing event in stock dirt at Bristol last night. He'll start on the inside of row 2. Defending Indy 500 winner Takuma Sato starts to his outside.
And in row 3, Sage Karam, a guy who also has a lot of experience on iRacing and has been very successful in his ventures as well, starts alongside of Connor Daly.
Gotta love that mullet from Connor. Not ready to get rid of that just yet. Marcus Ericsson inside of row 4 in the Chip Ganassi Racing entry. He'll have Max Chilton to his outside racing for Carlin.
And on row 5 is Felix Rosenquist making his debut with Arrow McLaren SP and in the 7, and right alongside him is...
We saw Ed Carpenter and Tony Kanaan making up row 6. Alex Palou, last week's winner. He's got the Road to Indy driver Braden Eves starting to his right in row 7.
Will Power will start on the inside of row 8 alongside Ed Jones.
Tony Kanaan, 2013 Indy 500 winner. As you mentioned, Katie, made his IndyCar debut on this track in 1998, starting alongside Charlie Kimball, who boasts Indy Lights experience here at Homestead-Miami Speedway. 9 rows, 18 drivers ready to go. Can't wait to see what we have in store. There are the cars in the pit lane. Love the Top Gun Racing livery. We saw that on RC's car last week. It reminds me of the old Johnny Lightning specials
yes,
of Al Unser back in the day, and that's really, really cool to see.
Always exciting to have a new team join the NTT IndyCar Series. We've got several of those this year as we continue to grow the paddock. Always good news for open wheel racing.
Let's take a look at that race format one more time. Again, 100 laps, 150 miles. The pit lane, by the way, this is the IndyCar-ation of the pit lane, so that means they need to come down into the access road just past where the cars are here on the backstretch. Use that access road into the pit lane, and I believe they use the access road on the pit out as well. All done at 50 miles per hour. That is a crawl around this compared to the race speeds. 2 fast repairs, as we mentioned. Fuel window, 47 to 50 laps, so at least 1 pit stop. I expect we'll see more throughout of this race.
And Ryan, that pit lane will take a lot of patience, not only in iRacing, but also in the real world.
IndyCar winners at this track. It's a real who's who of IndyCar royalty. Scott Dixon, a 3-time winner here. Dan Weldon won 3 in a row. Sam Hornish Jr., a 3-time winner. Michael Andretti, Dario Franchitti, Jimmy Vasser, Greg Moore, Max Pappas all have tasted victory at Homestead-Miami Speedway. The green flag is out, and we are racing with Enzo Fittipaldi, 3rd-generation driver, taking this field to green.
And already pulling out to a lead of over 2/10 as RC Enerson tries to follow and tuck in right behind him.
RC Enerson taking a peek to the outside. We drop further back, and we've got Takuma Sato, I believe, there on screen, right there in the center of the screen. One of the Dale Coyne Racing, Rick Ware Racing cars to the outside. Sage Karam in the all-black from Andretti Autosport in this mix as well. This is what we're going to see throughout course of this race. Multiple lanes that you can run, and it's all about finding that clean air on the nose, just like it is in a real Indy car.
You know, Sage Karam was extremely competitive in the 2020 IndyCar iRacing Challenges. You see him dive to the inside of Takuma Sato to try to take another spot away.
Taking a peek there, he's already been able to make up 1 spot around James Davison. Gets the move done on Takuma Sato as well. Davison there to follow him through. Those are the spots now, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I believe, as they run. R.C. Enerson has taken the lead away from Enzo Fittipaldi. They're out in front by about a second over this group. Look at all the dogfights you have up and down this field.
It'd be fun to get a second look at that pass for the lead as R.C. Enerson takes that away from the 52 of Enzo Fittipaldi, but it looks like Enzo Fittipaldi now back to the lead once again.
Swapping the lead back and forth as they do on a track like this. There you have Enerson now dropping back a spot, it would appear. That is the battle, I think, there with Davison. And Davison appears to be on a charge. I mentioned just last night he was racing a stock car on dirt at Bristol in iRacing. Won one of his heats, finished 5th in the feature, turns that around, and now as they come both in the virtual world and the real world, side by side up front, with Davison battling Enerson.
So that's really impressive, Ryan. You also compete in iRacing. Is that difficult to hop from one car into another?
Short answer is yes. I kind of specialize in one or two, and that's actually being a bit generous. Specializing implies some kind of talent, and there is not a whole lot to be found. Side by side here, once again, Davison to the inside, Enerson to the outside. Really exciting about the development of this Top Gun racing team located just down the road from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They had aspirations of being on the grid last year. They, I think, competed in some iRacing events last year. Maybe not, but certainly they've been around in the ether. And R.C. Enerson, a young guy with only 4 IndyCar starts to his name, not one with, not a huge name, but one that they feel like they can hitch their horse to. He is their guy for the future.
You know, he was actually really impressive in Indy Lights, and even more impressive in his debut in the NTT IndyCar Series. If I remember right, that debut at Mid-Ohio with Dale Coyne Racing, he impressed many people up and down pit lane of NTT Indies, and I wouldn't be surprised to also see them have some success this season.
And I should correct myself, that is the identical livery. Enzo Fittipaldi fighting with Enerson there at the front of the field. Davison's car looks very similar. Enzo filling in the car that, effectively the car that his brother Pietro drove last week. Those two will be swapping out here throughout the IndyCar iRacing Challenge, and both of them looking right at home on the high banks in an IndyCar.
And I think we'll have some brotherly competition, because Pietro didn't get the pole last week, and he finished 6th, got his little brother Enzo battling for the lead.
Pietro might be a name more familiar to fans at the moment as he continues to fight with Enerson on the inside. This is the battle for the race lead. Pietro, of course, filling in for Romain Grosjean last year in the Haas F1 team. We'll be doing some IndyCar races this year. Enzo, though, was part of the Ferrari driver quite some time, did a lot of racing on the open wheel circuit in Europe, but has committed to the road to Indy, and will be racing in a combined effort from Andretti Autosport and RT Motorsport.
And, you know, I was covering Pietro when he came back to racing from that terrible crash he had it back in 2018. He was even still on a scooter going on the pit lane at Mid-Ohio. Ryan, you could really see the pain on his face. He had that brace still on his leg. See the pain when he got out of the car. He is one tough cookie.
No question. Broke his leg in a sports car race at Spa that year. Was set to make his Indy 500 debut. It had to be put on hold, and the plan is to do it this year for Dale Coyne Racing with Rigger Racing. Featuring up at the front of the field here, Advantage Enzo Fittipaldi. R.C. Enerson now settling in line. Fittipaldi seems to have control of this from the front, and Enerson just trying to find a way to use that high line to his advantage, and maybe be able to make that pass and complete it. He's able to get up alongside. We've seen that time and time again, but actually making it has proven to be a problem.
And you know, Ryan, something that I was looking for was to check in on our pole sitter from last week, below, all the way back in 17th position right now. As you may remember, he absolutely dominated last week. I'm taking a look at him right now on our cameras that we can see. We can there for you. You can see he's just as concentrated as he was last. But Ryan, as someone with iRacing experience, how difficult is it to go from a smooth road course to an oval like this?
Well, the two disciplines are very different, and iRacing treats them as such. The iRating that basically judges how you have achieved relative to others in your field is completely separate between a paved oval and road courses, and so it's definitely a different discipline without a doubt. It does look like Alex has had an issue on that opening lap. He's dropped a lap. He's been credited with a pit stop already, and I wonder, because Felix Rosenquist also is off, has made a trip to the pit lane. If perhaps those two things could be related as we come on board with RC Anderson once again, taking a peek to the outside, trying to make that high line work. And once again, remember, this is a variable banking layout, so more banking to the top of the racetrack, and Anderson trying to use that to his advantage. He's got the momentum. He makes the pass around the high side.
You know, this would be very exciting race in the real world too, Ryan, watching these two drivers swap the lead forth, these side-by-side battles. That's what I love about IndyCar.
Wheel-to-wheel racing at 200+ miles per hour down the front straightaway at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Already 16 laps in the books, and it's been pretty clean. Although I was watching the onboard video from Charlie Kimball, and he was all crossed up, and looks like he's in the pit lane now, so perhaps problems there for the AJ Foyt Racing driver. Anderson was able to get up alongside on the backstretch that last time around, but Fittipaldi fought back to the inside. One thing I do wonder about is the tire wear, and yes, here in iRacing, just like in the real world, you've got to take care of your virtual Firestone tires, and running that line around the inside does have a tendency to increase tire degradation. So maybe that's part of RC's strategy here. Continue to run that high line, take care of his own tires, take care of his race car, and be there to battle towards the end of the stint.
And something else that would happen in the real IndyCar series as well, Ryan, as these two are battling it out, the car in third place would be able to gain some ground on these two, and I can see Sage Karam back there lurking. You see, that's the black car you see just behind Enzo Fittipaldi and RC Anderson as they battle it out for the lead. Sage Karam just slowly lurking there in the background, under for a second behind them.
He's as experienced with iRacing as anyone in this field, and yeah, you're right, 0.8 of a second at last check. Sage Karam behind that battle for the lead. Simon Pagenaud racing with Norman alongside in his home, it would appear, in North Carolina. You see him there in the yellow car. It's one of the McLaren cars just up the road ahead. Simon Pagenaud at the moment running back in the 13th spot.
Yeah, good to have Simon back with us. He won back-to-back rounds of the 2020 IndyCar iRacing Challenge. We'll see how he can do in the 2021 season. But there's the 7 of Felix Rosenqvist. We're going to have to get used to seeing him in those papaya and blue colors for Arrow McLaren SP, number 7 this season.
It's going to be a big year for him, making the switch after 2 years with Chip Ganassi Racing. I think a lot of eyes on him. That's a team that's been up and coming. It's shown a lot of promise. But Chip Ganassi Racing is unequivocally one of the big 3. I think Felix looks at it as a lateral move, but I think we're all waiting to see how accurate that is. The expectations are certainly there after the great year Pato O'Ward had for that team a year ago.
I'm really looking forward to those two being teammates, because if you remember their battle at Road America, that was a great battle where Felix took the win away from Pato at the very last minute, and getting his first win, also what could have been Pato's first win as well.
I want to make a couple of updates on some drivers that seem to have had some troubles. Tony Kanaan, you can add to that list. He's back in 16th now and has shown as having made a pit stop or perhaps being in the pits at the moment. So that's unfortunate for him. So Palou, Rosenqvist, Kanaan, and Kimball all seem to have hit problems at one time or another as we come back on board here. Love this gyrocam that iRacing provides.
I do love this view. This is Will Power that we ride on board with right now. He was very competitive in the IndyCar iRacing Challenge as well, scoring a top 5 4 different times, never quite scoring that win. As he tries to work his way through the field right now, he's back in 12th, Ryan.
Yeah, Will Power working on Braden Eves from the road to Indy. An Indy Pro 2000 driver, was having a great season last year in that championship, leading the points when he had a heavy accident here on the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that knocked him out for the rest of the year. But his plans for this upcoming season, looking at his iRating, he is the most experienced oval driver field. He's got the only iRating on the ovals up over 3,000. Will Power, by contrast, at 1,500. Tell the whole story, but it definitely is indicative, at least, that Braden's got some experience running on tracks, and he's putting that to use here, going side by side with a former IndyCar champion and Indy 500.
And how cool is that for Eves, an Indy Pro 2000 driver right now, to be able to hop into this IndyCar iRacing Challenge and race alongside guys like Will Power, who are Indy 500 and NTT IndyCar Series champions.
How nerve-wracking must that be? Because these are the people you aspire to race against, and here you are in the same forum. I know how that goes on iRacing. Sometimes you end up with some of these people in your races, and it makes me super nervous. I can't imagine what Braden Eves is feeling like.
So I want to know, who's the quote-unquote most famous race car driver, or the driver you look up to the most that you've raced against?
I would say, I know I ran into Cristiano D'Amata,
Wow.
a former IndyCar driver, in a race. I wasn't prepared for that question. I've been in with...
We'll let you think on it.
Yeah, but I mean, it is amazing who you can end up. I've been in with Sage Karam, I know, actually, in an 500 practice before, and that was really neat. He was incredibly fast, as you might expect. Here's a battle for position. Takuma Sato to the inside of Connor Daly. That's the fight for 5th. We've got Ericsson and Chilton battling a little bit further back. Sato able to get that past, a little bit of slide job there on corner exit. Connor should know all about that, his dirt track experience.
I would love to talk to Takuma Sato at some point, either during this race or after. He did participate in the 2023 rounds, the 2020 IndyCar iRacing Challenge. His best result of 12th, and he's also up battling for a 5th place this season.
Yeah, doing a great job there. Connor able to get in that slipstream and get that spot back, so he's back up to 5th. Sato right behind, and then it's Marcus Ericsson, Max Chilton. In fact, Chilton is to have made that move, so I think that was who was in behind this battle right here.
And as we saw Connor Daly take that spot away from Takuma Sato, looks like Takuma gets it back just now. I want to talk about Connor Daly's rig for a minute, because if you remember last year, COVID-19 hit, unfortunately. We did the first season of the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. Connor just had an office chair and a steering wheel, which I think a lot of people had going into quarantine last year. But now he has got a brand new setup. He's partnered with Logitech and some other iRacing partners and got a pretty impressive rig. Full chassis, the whole deal.
Yeah, I'd have to say it would be suboptimal, his former rig. I'm amazed he was as successful as he was. I actually think that was Felix Rosenquist's lap car that we saw in the back, not Max Chilton. So Max and Ericsson still a little bit further behind, and this is a tough spot for Felix to be in. These two are fighting for a top 5 position. He is a lap down, actually 3 laps down at this point. He'd love to get going. He'd love to try and get some of those laps back. We think, depending on the severity of the incidents, we could see some yellows, so there is a chance to try and get your way back into this fight, but you also don't want to mess with guys who've got a good run going.
Yeah, it looks like Takuma Sato has now lost a little bit of ground to Connor Daly. Meanwhile, as we take a quick look up front, looks like Enzo Fittipaldi has been holding on to the lead for a few laps, with that battle for the lead slowing down just a little bit.
Yeah, he's actually pulled out a gap now, 1.7 seconds over R.C. Peterson, who has fallen into the clutches of Sage Karam, running in the 3rd position, less than half a second behind. That is definitely within range to be able to pick up that tow, pick up that draft, to hopefully be able to make a slingshot pass. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go watch in here with this fight. Looks like they're looking at, this is Ed Jones on the screen?
That looks to be...
Or Ed Jones has had a problem.
Yeah.
You were trying to point out to me. Working on our sign language.
Yes, we'll work on that for you next week, but it does look like Ed Jones also has had a problem. Alex Lowe, Felix Rosenquist, Charlie Kimball, and Tony, among other drivers with issues so far in this race, just 34 laps in.
So put Marcus Ericsson up a spot around Takuma Sato. Marcus now running in 6th, entering his 3rd season in the NTT IndyCar Series. That's pretty amazing. It seems like he just got here from Formula One, and I've seen some interviews from him talking about really this is the year to shine. They really focused in on trying to keep a core around him. Remember, he switched teams from year 1 to year 2, so this will be year 2 with Ganassi, year 3 overall, and he's got every reason to believe this could be a break at the year. He's got the 1 podium going back to Detroit a couple years ago in his rookie season, and I think he's got his eyes set on a lot more podiums than that.
Well, look at that core around him, Ryan. Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Jimmy Johnson, Alex Palou. There is so much data, so much feedback there that he can learn from and absorb. It looks like he will be in for a good season this year.
Able to make that pass stick on Takuma Sato, who seems to be having trouble keeping that car down towards the white line. We mentioned perhaps a slide job on Connor Daly, but the more I watch Takuma, the more I think that maybe he's just lost the front end of that race car and is trouble keeping it pinned where he wants it around this racetrack, and he's been slipping back here in the last couple of laps. Fittipaldi, Enerson, Karam, Davison, Daly, the top 5, with Ericsson just outside running 6th. And it's an interesting story with Marcus because he comes from a road racing background, but he has really taken to the ovals. Had a good run going at Texas last year until they had a fuel rig issue. Had really good pace at Indy before his crash, and there's some other instances of it as well. For whatever reason, he's just taken to it like a duck to water, and this guy seems to too. Remember his qualifying effort at Indy last year. Alex Palou, we're talking about, watching him hard at work.
I do love watching Dale Coyne racing cars qualify at Indy, which Alex Palou was in a Dale Coyne racing car last year. They always seem to find that little bit of magic, and of course Chip Ganassi never really lost that magic in terms of the Indianapolis Motors. Look at the concentration and just the smoothness of Alex's hands around here.
This is not Forbes and Alex, as you see, 14th as they run, but he is down a lap. That, I believe, is Ed Carpenter running in 9th, who he's working his way around, one of the drivers in our field that has some real-world experience racing at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Here is Charlie Kimball. Just great to see Charlie turning some laps this week, Katie, because he didn't get off the grid last week.
Yeah, he calls it an operator error last week, so unfortunately he didn't get to participate in most of last week's race, so it is good to see him, although he is running in 17th. I see he's changed his view a little bit, though. Last week we had a great view of the ping pong table. This week it looks like we get to see some of those sculptures of tracks from around the world up on his wall, and a little better view of what he's seeing as well.
Did a lot of his formative racing over in Europe, got pretty high up the ladder system that leads to Formula One before coming stateside, a race winner in the NTT IndyCar Series at Mid-Ohio, going back to, I believe it was 2013. And another one who has been comfortable from day one, it would appear, on the oval tracks. We're going to see him back in the NTT IndyCar Series with AJ Foyt running at least the Indianapolis 500, and we sure hope to see him more. He's one of the popular guys in the paddock, without a doubt.
This is a great side-by-side shot where you can see Charlie's real hands on the left versus his virtual hands on the right, nearly identical, and it's really cool to see by side view.
Here is Will Power still fighting with Braden Eves, and watching Power take that high line around the track. I did want to make a mention of an update that came to some of the tracks. They're going to be rolled out at more in iRacing about that high line in particular. They have put in something to simulate that air bubble that is a race car traveling at speed when it's that close to the wall, that helps these drivers carry that extra speed and keep them off of the outside retaining wall. And Will is definitely using that to his advantage. He's found a way around there, and it seems to be working for him. Do need to report, though, and Katie, you can speak more to this, it's R.C. Enerson, one of our early contenders, has dropped.
And does that mean a pit stop?
It could be. We are in the pit window or close to it. There is a risk to pitting early on an oval like this because you will lose a lap, most likely, depending on where you're running. Now, he was so close to the front that maybe he can get away with it, and if I was better at this, I would have done my homework to find out just how much you would lose for a pit stop, but that could be a strategy play, as Enzo Fittipaldi has come to pit lane as well, which cycles now Sage Karam to the point.
And here's a look at Simon Pagenaud, currently running 10th, a nice side-by-side shot of his current view at his home in North Carolina versus his virtual view in Homestead-Miami, Florida. Look at the concentration also on his eyes. I love to see the focus and just where these drivers are tracking.
That is one of the great things about the IndyCar iRacing Challenge and some of these various iRacing championships and competitions we've seen in the last year or so, because you can't get that look right into the driver's eyes so easily when they've got the helmet on. And this gives you a great look at just what the driver looks like. Now, maybe the heart rate isn't what it would be, really traveling at 200 miles per hour, but the concentration level it takes to be adept at something like sim racing, like at iRacing, it's very close to what it takes to be good in a real car. And that's one of the things that the drivers do say helps them prepare for a race each weekend. Just getting the lap, getting back in that mode, especially after the off season. You can replicate some of that in iRacing.
Well, I think both take extreme concentration, right? Looks like Simon Pagenaud making a dive for the pit lane.
See how the virtual Team Penske pit crew does. In the
Are
real
they-
world, they're as good as they get.
Are they as fast virtually as they are in the real world?
We're about to find out. You noticed he had to make that trip to pit lane starting on the backstretch and take that access road, and that is by design. This particular layout of this track, it is the IndyCar layout, and that mimics the way that pit stops were handled in the real world. Here is Sage Karam, who does lead. Looks like his lap speeds are pretty close to what he was doing on new tires. Now, part of that is the fuel burn, and it's going to be a lighter car. That is, of course, modeled on iRacing as well. So I am curious if there is any time loss in staying out longer. Otherwise, I'd say that's definitely where you want to be. You don't want to risk going down the lap and having a yellow come out. As Will Power and others make their way to pit lane now. It looks like much field has taken that opportunity. Here is Marcus Ericsson now in the pit lane.
It will certainly be interesting to see how that strategy plays out for Sage Karam. And due to those pit stops, it looks like Ed Carpenter has now cycled into second.
So Ed Carpenter behind this man, Sage Karam, in the all-black Andretti car. Great to see Andretti connection there. He raced with them back in his junior open-wheel days. Kept that connection alive quite obviously. And if you're going to have someone filling in for one of your full-time drivers on iRacing, Sage Karam would be a great first call as we pass the halfway mark, 51 laps complete, and here comes Dalton Kellett. And it does look like that maybe running in traffic has allowed some of these drivers to save fuel and stretch the window beyond what we thought might be possible at the outset of this.
Yeah, we are on the back end of that fuel window, actually a little bit over at 51 laps as you see Sage Karam now finally making it to the pit lane.
So he will surrender the lead. Enzo Fittipaldi currently is out in front of R.C. Enerson after the top shuffles. That is that battle right there. So actually Enerson has gotten around Fittipaldi on this lap, I think, or am I getting confused with the NTT car that's pulling to the inside, or perhaps is this the other Dale Coyne with Rick Ware Racing car? Bear with me, folks. Apologies for that.
That does appear to be Enzo Fittipaldi, and I do believe that that was Alex Palou trying to pull out of Enzo's way.
Yeah, again, Alex with issues early in this one. Looks like he will repeat, barring some good fortune falling his way. Final 49 laps. He was the winner last week on the street circuit. You could call it that. Some of it is permanent, but on the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. And here we go on board with R.C. Enerson, who runs at the moment 1.5 seconds behind Enzo Fittipaldi in this Top Gun Racing entry.
So it looks like that might be Alex Palou just ahead of R.C. Enerson there. And then the car in front of the next one would be Enzo Fittipaldi, who he's chasing for the lead.
James Davison runs in third, so it's been a really strong showing for the Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing side of that operation. With Enzo running first, James Davison running in third. Ed Jones, also from the Dale Coyne Racing stable. He's with the Vassar-Sullivan Consortium alongside. He is currently down in the 16th position.
Yeah, Ed Jones now back in the NTT IndyCar Series in the Sealmaster Dale Coyne Vassar-Sullivan car. It's good to see him back in the IndyCar Series after taking a year off, Ryan. I read an article last week that said he was actually studying business at MIT during his year off. What an impressive.
Yes. He was supposed to be running in the German DTM Touring Car Series, which IndyCar fans might be with because that's where Robert Wickens came from before his rookie season in IndyCar. He had a ride lined up there, had gone back home to Dubai, where he is from. This is Ed Jones we're speaking about. And ultimately, travel restrictions made it impossible for him to take up what he was planning to do, racing in Europe last year. So, yep, he's found other opportunities to keep himself occupied. Certainly, he put his pandemic break to use better than I did. I wish I was that proactive.
Yeah, I think I cleaned most of my quarantine, so he was certainly more productive than I was.
Yeah, the letters MIT did not enter into the conversation in my household. But he also put it to work trying to figure out where he wanted to resume his racing career, and great to have him back in the NTT IndyCar Series. Had the great rookie year with Dale Coyne Racing, raced a season with Chip Ganassi Racing, did a partial schedule with Ed Carpenter Racing with Scuderia Corsa, rode in street courses back a few years ago, and has been on the outside looking in. But I think, year away made him realize how much he wanted to be in this championship, and great to have him back.
Yeah, and he did love being with him. A third place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I remember that exciting day for him and that team as well. Here's another look at Enzo Fittipaldi, still out in the lead, and another look at Kellett, an onboard look with his car.
And Dal Kellett, the Canadian driver, set for his first full season of IndyCar Series racing. Certainly one who is very busy with iRacing and part of a really unique STEM initiative. He built his own sim racing wheel. You can see him using it right there. That is unbelievable. Really, really cool.
And made out of mostly recycled parts and cardboard. Ryan, you can actually see the layers of cardboard. Talk about something else that never entered my mind while being at home throughout this COVID-19 pandemic. Dalton actually has an engineering physics degree from the Queen's University in Ontario. You can see also with the virtual headset on there that also gives him a great view of this Homestead-Miami track. So look at each of these screens. You can see his view right now, what his steering wheel looks like, he's doing in the real world. All of it pieced together. Quite impressive, Ryan.
It really is, and this is part of a STEM initiative, like I said, that uses iRacing. Schools form teams to not only race in iRacing, but equipment. That's a part of this league that he is a part of, and certainly helps to consult with. And it's a really, really neat deal. Their goal was to get at least 50 teams signed up with some pretty major bonuses for participating and signing up. And I think they're in the pretty early stages still of that here this year, but can't wait to see how that plays out. And my goodness, we talked about Connor Daly's rig. This is on the other end of it.
And this is a prototype that Dalton actually created so the students can model their version of it after Dalton's prototype.
I'm just thinking about the thousands of dollars that people spend on their sim rigs, and maybe that's hitting a little too close to home here. That makes his own out of cardboard.
You should call him.
I should. Hey, Dalton, let's talk after this,
Yeah.
all right? I want to hear all about this.
Maybe he'll
really
build
cool.
you one.
That would be fantastic, yes. So he's doing a nice job with that at the moment, running back in the 13th spot. I think might have had some issues early on in this race. I'm not positive about that, but it did seem like he was mired towards the back right away, but has had a nice clean run ever since. And with 37 laps to go, it is still Enzo Fittipaldi out in front, leading R.C. Enerson and James Davison. And we go on board with another battle here. A little bit further in the pack, this is Braden Eves once again, and he is fighting with Ed Carpenter just up the road.
Yeah, it's great to see these onboard views of these battles for a real-time view of this action that could turn into some side-by-side.
This is an Indy Pro 2000 driver with aspirations of being an IndyCar driver, following one of the masters of the oval racing craft in an IndyCar, Ed Carpenter, three-time Indy 500 pole sitter, multiple-time race winner in the IndyCar series on the ovals. And I imagine there's a lot that can be learned if you're Braden Eves, even in a virtual environment like this, just watching one of the great oval racers of his generation just up.
Yeah, and this is an exciting addition to this season of the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. We will have a Road to Indy driver featured each week. Braden Eves, of course, also the featured driver last week, ended up 7th, and we just mentioned it, working inside the top 10 this week.
Having a great run, that's for sure. Connor Daly leading this pack. Takuma Sato, the third car in line. That's Felix Rosenquist in the middle. He is not on the same lap as these two, having encountered issues early on, and is now in 17th position, having made a couple of pit stops already, and is 3 laps down leader. So Connor Daly currently in 6th, and he's got Takuma Sato behind him. These two have been close together seemingly from the start of this race, Katie.
Yeah, it's been Enzo versus RC and Connor versus Takuma all race long, as you see Takuma make another pass on Connor Daly.
And these two just swapping that spot back and forth, using the slipstream to their advantage. To my eye, at least, Sato looked stronger early in the stint relative to Connor with the power mullet right there on screen.
Is that what we're calling it?
I just called it that.
Okay.
What would you call it? Not that?
Next question.
It is a look, and he's committed to it.
He is committed.
I am
yes.
impressed with the level of commitment there. And hey, it's working for him. Look at the run he's having, running 7th right now. It did seem like the came back to him as the stint went along. the first time around relative to Takuma, because it was Daly that led, I believe, going into the round of pit stops. Right now, though, he's going to have to settle in for 7th, and maybe Takuma made some changes, or maybe it's just tires that have helped him out, because he's taken off. He's running 6th and trying to track down Marcus Ericsson.
So, Ryan, how much can you feel the tire fall off on iRacing?
Oh, it's big. You definitely can, and it's knowing what to feel for. I suspect it is, an adjustment if you're coming to iRacing for the first time, but in a lot of respects, I mean, they put a lot of work into modeling the tires as well as they can. The other thing that they do a great job with is the aero wash. You hear about Bush, right? And right here, I think this is Will Power. He would be feeling it running this close to another car, and I think that's part of the reason we saw him running the high line earlier. He was where Braden Eves wasn't. Right now, he's trying to run down Daly, but he's got about 2.5 seconds to make up. That is a lap car up ahead for Will Power, but you definitely do feel it behind another car, and you just can't get the front to grip the way that you want it to. Having it wash up in front of you like not what you want to see if you're Will Power, but interesting. It looked like he might have backed out of it there a little bit, maybe trying to some fuel.
Yeah, and this is all things that you will see in real NTT IndyCar Series this season, especially as we head to another short oval like Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis.
Exactly right. Great look at the Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware racing car. Our leader, Enzo Fittipaldi, has built this lead now to over 3 seconds. This has been a remarkably clean race, and I shouldn't have said that most likely.
Did you just jinx us?
I may have. But it's also been remarkable how close the fighting has been, and to see Fittipaldi be able to pull out a lead like this, no one else has been able to build any kind of significant advantage up at the front of this field. That's really impressive. This youngster who is going to be making his move to the state, focusing on the road to Indy here next year with his eyes on following the family tradition in racing in the IndyCar Series.
I've never had a chance to talk to Enzo, but looks like we could be talking to him during post-race today. Of course, I've talked to his brother Pietro Fittipaldi several times throughout his career when he joined us in the NTT IndyCar Series. His uncle, Max Pappas, of course, up in race control for the NTT IndyCar Series now. So I'm curious to see what tips Enzo might have taken or not taken from Pietro, because he seems to be a little bit better of an iRacer.
Well, you mentioned Max Pappas, his uncle, and Max is a former IndyCar race winner at Homestead-Miami Speedway, so that's a great resource to have. You've got Chris Fittipaldi, who is a cousin, who is the nephew of Emerson, so I'm a little confused on how cousins work, but it's like a second cousin or something like that to Pietro.
They're related.
And you have all kinds of people, though, that you can lean on if you're in this Fittipaldi family to get some advice, and I suspect they've done exactly that.
I'd be calling Grandpa for some advice, I think.
Two-time Indianapolis 500 winner, multiple world champion in Formula One, Emerson Fittipaldi. This is Will Power once again. Has he been able to make any progress on Connor Daly? Ooh, that was close to the outside wall there. Just 3 laps to go, trying to keep it clean. He has pulled in a little bit, but we're talking about tenths of a second here the last 3 or 4 laps. That's not going to get the job done, and I suspect this lap traffic isn't helping. And I do wonder when he made that pit stop, if he might have to save just a little bit of fuel. Some of the drivers did come in a little bit early in that pit window, earlier than we were anticipating.
Well, I'm curious to see how this will play out in terms of tires, because we talked about guys like Takuma Sato who are very strong in the beginning of their run and tend to fall off. Will it be more beneficial for them to come in and get fresh tires?
And we saw the Sealmaster car of Ed Jones pull down and head into the pits, so that now does give some clean track here for Will Power. And here we go. Pit stop for one of the Rick Ware cars. I think that's James Davison pitting out of 3rd. And the conventional wisdom coming in was this was going to be a 2-stop race. If it stays green, you wonder if that's not going to be a requirement. He was going to take some yellows, and so maybe seeing that, we're seeing a couple people come to the pits here trying to cover to make it to the end.
And it looks like that may have actually been Enzo Fittipaldi that pulled to the pit lane. RC Enerson, it looks like out in front now. Yes, that was Enzo Fittipaldi that pulled onto pit lane, so he'll lose several positions.
A little confused on timing screen says that Enzo is still out in front, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. Maybe we just need to refresh our timing and scoring. We'll see about doing that here in a moment as we look at R.C. Enerson once again in the toppers. 20 laps to go at Homestead-Miami Speedway. It is Enerson leading the way. What a story that would be. A driver with just 4 real-life IndyCar starts to his name. And they're spaced out over several years. It's been a little while since we've seen him on even a semi-regular basis, but got big aspirations for not just this year, but beyond with that Top Gun Racing team. Back with Will Power right now, trying to track down the 7th place driver, Connor Daly. And I think he's made a little bit of progress, but not quite enough at this point. Well, maybe he has, because timing and scoring needs to get refreshed, so I could be wrong on that. I think that is Connor actually just up the road, and there you can see on the screen, yes, just a 1/10 of a second. So indeed, Will Power has caught Connor Daly, and battle is joined now for the 6th position. Will Power is a guy who I'm not sure how happy he is to be back at Homestead. He had 2 previous starts. Neither of them went very well, unfortunately for Will, in the real world, but doing very nicely here. And he's got his hands full with Connor Daly just up the road. Connor had a great year on the ovals last year, racing in the Carlin team.
And we'll work to find out exactly what happened with Enzo Fittipaldi, but it looks like R.C. Enerson is now out in the lead, Ryan, with Sage Karam not far behind in the 98, and James Davison rounding out the top 3, or what would be our podium, in the 53 from Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing.
Well, it's come down to the wire here with 16 laps to go. Will Power stalking Connor Daly in the fight for the 6th position. This is Enzo here. Now James Davison. Interesting that Sage Karam has snuck into this conversation, running in 2nd. Here we go, on board with Davison. He is right behind Karam. And now, do you try and work as a unit here to try and run down the leader? Especially for James Davison, you've got to consider that leader. Well, actually, it's not true. So maybe there is some way that you can work together to try and track him down, not fight side by side like you were talking about earlier, where you can definitely lose some time if you go side by side for too long.
Yeah, you'll certainly want to try to work together to catch up to R.C. Enerson, but something that these 3 also need to be thinking about is that final pit stop. Will that come into play, which is Fort Hill?
And if they ran long enough on the opening stint, and if they've saved enough fuel, they may not need another pit stop. So, boy, there's a whole lot that needs to be settled, and we're running out of time.
Well, you would certainly think with R.C. Enerson and his battle with Enzo Fittipaldi that maybe he did burn a little extra fuel, or did he tuck back in behind Enzo just in time to save that fuel? It wouldn't surprise me, though. Sage and James Davison have saved enough fuel as they've been kind of behind other drivers.
And we'll have to keep an eye on that. It's an interesting strategy call, and there's always the chance we get a yellow here in the final 12 laps that could stack everybody back up again. Then you got to start thinking, well, how valuable are tires relative to track position? And here we go.
RC diving to pit lane.
Now that answers your question. Maybe he did use quite a bit of fuel. A duel for the lead we saw early in the race. I don't know this for sure, but I suspect the drivers are supposed that we've gone green as long as we have.
So maybe was what we thought might have been an issue for Enzo Fittipaldi, was that him diving to pit lane early, knowing that everyone else would also have to come to pit lane, and they'll all cycle out behind him.
No, we think it's a possibility. So we're going to have to be on our toes here to see how this one plays out. This is your race leader right now with Sage Karam out in front, but potentially could still owe us to pit stop. I think you could say that about just everybody. Currently running ahead of Enzo Fittipaldi, who right now is back in 10th, still on the lead lap. Man, this is going to be really interesting, and that's crucial there as Enerson does the lap to Sage Karam.
Yeah, remember that pit delta is 22 seconds. Meanwhile, another battle that we've been watching all night long is Takuma Sato versus Connor Daly. They're still stuck right there together, Ryan. Takuma Sato in 4th, Connor Daly in 5th.
Yep, 1.5 seconds between those two. Another 1.5 seconds if you drop back to Will Power from Takuma Sato. This is about spaced out as they have been all night. These two in particular, Sato and Daly, seem to have found each other and are clinging to each other like magnets. It seemed like Sato had the edge a little bit earlier in this run, but maybe Connor's coming back a little bit. And here's Ed Carpenter, Don't Devon Ed running back in ninth. This is a fight for position with Braden Eves. Now, last time we checked in on them, Braden was actually behind Ed, so he might have made a pass for position here as of late, and now that puts Braden behind Enzo. That's 7th, 8th, and 9th. Enzo Fittipaldi, Braden Eves, Ed Carpenter as they run.
You know, Ed did compete with us in the last season of IndyCar iRacing Challenges of 9th at Michigan and Oval. No surprise there. And I think I really enjoyed watching Ed last year because it just seemed like he was just having fun. He didn't feel the pressure, just fun.
Taking a peek from the visor of Marcus Ericsson. Marcus now running in podium contention. He is in, I think that's Dalton Kellett up ahead, and he's got the opportunity, perhaps, to sit behind that car. Is that James Davis up ahead, actually? Might be. So, you can definitely save fuel the tow. There are races won and lost on iRacing doing it, and that could
Are you
very well,
speaking from experience?
maybe. Did look like it was Dalton Kellett there, and here's Davison dropping to the inside. He's coming to pit lane, so no one now to punch a hole in the air for Marcus Ericsson. That's going to hurt his fuel mileage. Maybe Davison just dropped back to save fuel himself.
A lot of strategies going on here. Just 5 laps to go in this race from Homestead-Miami of the 2021 IndyCar iRacing Challenge. Looks like who's that? Connor Daly once again fighting with Takuma Sato.
And this battle is catching the back of Davison and Ericsson, who I do suspect were saving fuel, and I guess it couldn't be done as Davison does come down to the pit lane with just 4 laps to go. So much changing here in the final miles. James Davison pits out of podium contention, comes to pit lane. Sage Karam has a massive lead of 15 seconds over Connor Daly, but has he saved enough fuel? Marcus Ericsson maybe off the pace here a little bit. He's dropped back to 3rd. And Enzo Fittipaldi on the charge. He is in 5th, but 17 seconds behind Karam in the lead.
That's what I was going to say as we mentioned different drivers slowing or dropping to pit lane, but who do we spy? Enzo Fittipaldi creeping in 5th place.
Well, this is just fascinating to see who has saved enough fuel. Did they plan on an all-green flag race? Karam has come around to start the 3rd to last lap, I guess. 2 laps to go. Coming around this time by. The lead still 56 seconds over Connor Daly. Takuma Sato running in 3rd behind. Then Enzo Fittipaldi, who has caught the back of Sato now. And Sato is only a 1.5 seconds behind Daly. So Fittipaldi then making his way into the mix as we've got Karam already taking the white flag. Just 1 more lap to go.
If Enzo is going to make any moves, he's got to make them right now. Sage Karam is closing in on his first win of the 2021 IndyCar iRacing Challenge, as he is already a winner in IndyCar iRacing.
Oh, look at the stress on his face coming around, but he has done it. Sage Karam stretches the fuel, gets it done on a single stop, and wins round 2 of the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. Connor Daly was in 2nd the last time around. There is strife all over this racetrack. Daly, though, has saved enough fuel. He gets it done. And what about the recovery from Enzo Fittipaldi? The best on the 2-stop strategy. He committed to that nice and early, and he converts it into a podium.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to Enzo, learn a little bit about him and his family, figure out what he was thinking with that early strategy call. Again, most of these drivers calling their own strategy as we see some of the drivers come to a stop. But Sage Karam pulling off that win. Connor Daly in 2nd, Enzo rounding out our podium tonight, Ryan.
Sato, it looks like, was able to stretch the fuel far enough, but had to back the pace off. He'll settle for 4th. Braden Eves completes the top 5. A great run from that youngster. Ed Carpenter, Marcus Ericsson, Max Chilton. Also there in the top, R.C. Anderson and Alex Palou, the last of the top 10.
James Davison, one of the drivers that had run within the top 3 all night, now will finish in 11th. Dalton Kellett with that homemade steering wheel finishing 12th. Will Power in 13th. Pagano in 14th. Felix Rosenquist with trouble early. He'll finish the night in 15th. Ed Jones in 16th, Tony Kanaan in 17th, and Charlie Kimball rounds out our field in 18th, Ryan.
Wow. What a
What
race.
a night.
That was something else. And we talked some about that fuel window at the Open. Quite frankly, I thought we would see at least a full course yellow or two, and that would take a lot of that out of the equation. But instead, that was the crucial element. And it just goes to show how much iRacing matches the real world, knowing how to use the slipstream, to use the fuel mixture knob, to try and save just that little bit extra. It can mean everything in a race like this.
It was a surprisingly smooth night, Ryan. I did expect quite a few incidents on track, but thankfully we went green to checkered. No yellows in the middle.
Let's give a shout out too to Alex Pillow, who comes home in 10th, had issues right off the bat, dropped to the back of the field on the first couple of laps. Last week's winner perseveres and still gets a top 10. He's got to be feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, we'll see how he fares next week when we go for the fan challenge. What was about Sebring versus Kentucky for round 3 of the 2021 IndyCar iRacing Challenge.
And I believe we're going to be unveiling the winner of that fan vote. So what do you think? Where would you like 1.5 mile Kentucky Speedway or the classic airport circuit that is Sebring?
You know, Jake and I had this debate last week, and my vote was for Sebring because I feel like that really rounded out the real IndyCar. Smooth road course, short oval, bump like course, right? What's your vote?
I would love to see Sebring as well, so we'll see.
We'll see what you fans picked here in just a few minutes.
That will be really cool to see. I think either of the choices would be a lot of fun. Hopefully, we'll get to find out there very soon. We also hope to speak with our podium in just a few moments. Sage Karam, our race winner. Connor Daly gets it done. I'm sure that's going to be an interesting interview to hear his perspective on how that. I mean, he had a good run going all throughout the race. He was inside the top 10, right around 5th, 6th, 7th for much of the race, and finds himself on the podium.
And his return with Sierra iRacing too. He missed the first week due to some commitments with the U.S. Air Force, so he is back with us this week, and he'll also finish out the 2021 IndyCar iRacing Challenge next week when we unveil. I can't unveil it yet. We unveil Sebring or Kentucky for round 3 of this iRacing Challenge.
And how about young Enzo Fittipaldi, just 19 years old? Don't believe there's much oval experience, if any, in the background. The 2018 Italian F4 champion who went up and stepped up into Formula Regional European Series, finished as the runner-up in 2019, raced in F3 last year, but has had to switch the focus to the U.S., and it's just great to see the Fittipaldi name. It's one of those royalty names, right, in motorsports around the world, and then certainly here in the States, to see them not just now with Enzo, but also Pietro, who will have at the IndyCar level for a partial season this year.
Yeah, when Pietro joined us back in 2018, I did see a lot of race fans immediately drawn to him, of course, because of that Fittipaldi name, and I have no doubt that Enzo will do the same for a lot of race fans this year, Ryan.
And then Takuma Sato, the defending Indianapolis 500 winner, comes home in 4th. Great fuel save by him there in the final stint. Braden Eves, a great story representing the road to Indy, proving once again what a great training ground the road to Indy is. It seems like inevitably you throw graduates of the road to Indy up into the IndyCar series and they acquit themselves very well right away. This is not that, but still he's going wheel to wheel with some of his idols, like we talked about earlier, and he comes home with the 5th place finish. Even if it is a virtual race, that's something that's got to give him confidence coming into the new season.
Yeah, and he will be competing in that Indy 2000 this year. It looks like now we are just about ready to talk to some of our podium finishers this evening. Kick it off with the guy that finished in 2nd, Connor Daly. Connor, are you with us? Okay, maybe we're not quite ready for Connor. So we'll chat a little bit more about these the finishing order here, Ryan. It looks like maybe Connor is with us.
Oh, I'm
maybe
here.
taking a 2nd place
I'm here.
victory type lap. Can we try Connor one more time? Connor, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me? This is going great.
Now, sounds like we might have some communication issues. Hopefully, we'll get those resolved and we'll be able to hear from
I'm right here, I
our
swear.
top 3 very soon. Looking at the rest of the top 10, any other stories that stand out. I think it's interesting to see Max in this. He's been quite public that outside of the Indianapolis 500, oval racing doesn't have much appeal, but still, when he hops back in the car here, has done a nice job, comes home in 8th.
And it looks like, unfortunately, we are having some patient issues, so we won't be able to talk to any of our podium finishers this evening, which means I think we'll end it on a positive note. Ryan, are we ready to unveil where we're going to race next week?
I am if you are.
I'll let you do the honors.
All right. Well, it's going to be staying in Florida, so book your hotels now. If you're already here at Homestead-Miami Speedway, the bumpy Sebring International Raceway is the fan vote winner. So hope you join us April 1st, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This has been a popular test track on the short course for IndyCars for a very long time. People have often said, well, can you race there on the full course? We just saw the 12 Hours of Sebring last week, the big sports car race. Kind of makes you think, makes you wonder. We're going to get a preview of what that might look like on the IndyCar iRacing Challenge next week.
And the NTT IndyCar Series just got back from a test at Sebring, so I'm very curious to see how that will turn out as well. We know some of the drivers that were fast in the real world because of that test. We'll see if it's the same case in the virtual world.
Yeah, can't wait to see it. It's a great home of the inaugural United States Grand Prix, home of North American endurance racing as well. Just one of the classics in this country, and really excited that that was the fan choice. Kentucky would have been fun too. It would have been a lot like tonight, most likely, but looks like Sebring is where we're headed.